Okay, this is the last video for this unit. So we've gone through all the different types of factoring, and we've done factoring with uh, solving equations, and now we are finally to the end, and we're going to give you some different types of word problems that you will run into and how to solve them. Solving them is actually pretty easy. Usually for people the hardest part is just setting them up, but in the beginning it's just really kind of the easy part is they're not super hard, so if you just kind of know what you're doing and if you read it carefully, they're pretty easy to set up. Okay, so let's look at this first one. It says the product of one more than a number and one less than the number is 8. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you are going to want to give the number, because they didn't tell us what it is, you're going to want to give it a variable, right? So we're going to say x equals the number. Okay, so whatever x is going to give us the number. Okay, and then first of all it says product, so we know when it says product we're going to be multiplying two things together, right? Okay, or at least two things together. So product means multiply, and when we do multiply we usually do it with parentheses, right? Okay, so the product of one more than a number. Okay, well we said the number's x, and if we to do one more than x, we're just going to do x plus 1. Okay, and one less than the number. So that means that the x minus 1. Okay, so that's 1 less than x, right? Okay, and it says is 8. So is always means equals, and 8. Alright, so what do we do? How do we solve this? Okay, so the first part we're going to do here is we're going to, if we just brought that 8 over right away, that wouldn't help us a whole lot other than getting it equal to 0, which is important. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to go ahead and try to multiply these out and see what happens, right? Because we have a difference of 2 squares here, right? Okay, when you multiply these together, that's a difference of 2 squares. So hopefully you remember your shortcut. If you don't, go ahead and multiply it all out, but you should end up with x squared minus 1, right? Okay, x squared minus 1, if you factor it back out, ends up with x plus 1 and x minus 1. And then we still have our equals 8 over there. Okay, and now, like we talked about in the last part when we're solving equations, how do you solve it and find what x is? You set it equal to 0, right? Well, right now it equals 8, so we got to make it equal to 0, and we do that by getting the 8 off of that side. Okay, and so now 8 minus 8 is 0, and then we have x squared minus 9. Huh, well look at that, that's a difference of 2 squares too. Okay, let me see if I can shrink this all up and give myself some more room. Okay, so I have x squared minus 9. Okay, and now that's a difference of 2 squares, right? So the x squared minus 9 is going to take us back out to x plus 3 and x minus 3. And we're going to set those equal to 0. So x plus 3 or x minus 3 is equal to 0. And if you want to find out what x can be, right, you take each part and set it equal to 0. So we have x plus 3 is equal to 0, or we have x minus 3 is equal to 0. So we solve those, and we get x equals negative 3, or we have x is equal to 3. And either one of those will make that solution work. Okay, if you want to check them really quick, you plug them both in, and they should both work for you, right? And that is the first problem. There you go. Okay, the next question says the square of a number minus twice the number is 48. Okay, well the square of a number, well first let's do x equals the number, right? Because we didn't tell us what it is. So x equals the number, and it says the square of a number. So squaring x just means x squared minus twice the number. Okay, now again, twice doesn't mean squared, it means 2 times it, right? So 2x. So x squared minus 2x is 48, which means equals 48. Okay, so this looks pretty simple. Okay, you could factor out the x, but I know that if I bring that 48 over, I'm going to have a little trinomial there, so that's going to work out pretty easy. So let's bring over this 48 and set it equal to 0. So you get x squared minus 2x minus 48 is equal to 0. Okay, and now we can factor this, right? Okay, so we're going to have two parentheses. It's a regular binomial to factor. There's no special deal about it. So what factors of 48? Okay, we have our minus there, so let's put our x's in, and then we're going to multiply to be negative. So that means one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. And what factors of 48, if you have a positive and a negative answer, are going to subtract to be 2? Okay, well hopefully you've already got it in your head, but let's look at the factors. So we got 1 and 48, 2 and 24. Can 3 go in there? Yeah, 3 can go in there, and 16, 4 and 12, 5 can't, 6 and 8. Oh, look at, there you go, 6 and 8. If you subtract those, you get 2, right? Well, we want it to be negative 2, so the 6 is going to be positive, and the 8 is going to be negative. So let's put our 8 next to the minus, and our 6 next to the positive. Okay? Alright, so we got x plus 6 and x minus 8. Okay, if you want to check that really quick, multiply it all back out, and it'll come out right. And then you set it equal to x plus 6 equals 0, and x minus 8 equals 0. And so we solve minus 6, x equals negative 6, plus 8, x equals 8. That's an ugly x. Alright, so our numbers are 8 and negative 6. That would be your two solutions. Okay? So that was a pretty simple one, right? That's pretty straightforward there in the wording, so that should be pretty simple to do. Alright, so once you've done that one, you have some try these. So there's some try these there at the bottom of page 22. You have A, B, and if you turn over to 23, you have C and D as well. So go ahead and give all those a shot before you watch through them. Okay, see if you can do it on your own, because most of these are pretty straightforward. Okay, you should be able to. Give it a shot. Okay, the first example we have here, it says the product of, okay, so that means multiply, right? Oh, there we go. Oh, I got a little blue. Hopefully this shows up okay for you guys. Okay, the product of 7 less than a number. So my number is going to be x, right? So x is the number. Okay, so 7 less than a number, so 7 less than x is x minus 7. And 8 less than the number, that's going to be x minus 8, is 0, equals 0. Okay, now normally if you put it in this situation and you have a number over on the end, so it says equals 0, right? So if it said like equals a number, what you'd want to do is you'd want to multiply all that out first and then bring that number over. Okay, and you'll see that in the next example. But for right now, they set it equal to 0, so we don't have to do anything other than just solve. So we can just do x minus 7 equals 0 and x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, and just bring those 7 over. X is going to equal 7, and then bring over the 8, and x equals 8. So either one of those will work out fine for that problem. Okay? Alright, see if I can make all this stuff move together. I'm going to slide it on up. Okay, the next one. Let's do this one in red. The product of one more than a number and one less than a number is 24. Okay, so the number again, x equals the number. Okay, and a product of, so we're going to do parentheses, that means multiply, and it says is 24, I'm going to put that in right now so I can get that done with. Okay, the product of one more than a number, so that's going to be x plus 1, and one less than the number, that's x minus 1, right? Okay, and here's that situation I was just talking about, right? We have a 24 over here. And if you brought 24 over, it'd be just kind of weird sitting off there to the side, right? So what you're going to do first is you're going to FOIL this But hopefully you realize that you have x plus 1, x minus 1, and that's a difference of two squares, right? So again, x squared minus 1, okay, is the answer to that, equals 24. Okay, now to solve for x, what do we have to do? We have to get it equal to 0, right? So we're going to bring 24 over. Okay, and hopefully as you're seeing this kind of work out, you're like seeing like, oh, you know what? That's going to be 25 over there, right? And 25 is a perfect square. And so look at, we have a difference of two squares. So how do you do that? You get x plus 5 and x minus 5. Okay, so we're moving along. Alright, last part. We now have it factored all the way down, so you would do x plus 5 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0, and you'll subtract 5, x equals negative 5, add 5, x equals 5. There you go. There's your two solutions right there. Alright, we're going to keep moving on. Okay, the square of a number minus the number is 20. So again, the number is x. Okay, x equals the number. Okay, so the square of the number, that means x squared, minus the number, that means minus x, equals 20. Okay, hopefully you knew. We got to make it equal to 0, right? So we're going to bring that 20 over. So you get x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. And we're going to factor that one down. And hopefully you thought about this already and the factors that subtract, because you have a positive and a negative, right? So the numbers that subtract, that are the factors of 20, that subtract to be negative 1, right? You're going to put the 5 there and the 4 there. Okay, hopefully you got that. Okay, and let's keep going here. Oh, darn, I'm going to work over my work here. That's not good. Let me see if I can just move my work. Oh, no, that took the whole thing, darn it. Alright, well, we'll just move it over to the side. How about that? And then we'll work it over to the side. So we have x plus 4 equals 0, and x minus 5 equals 0. So we're going to do plus 5. You get x equals 5, minus 4. You get x equals negative 4. And there you go. There's the numbers. Okay, works out really well. Alright, let's move this around again. Okay, and we'll move it up. Okay, it says 1 more than twice the square of a number, and I can't see the end, is 73. Okay, so 1 more than twice the square of a number. 1 more than twice the square of a number. So we got 1 more twice the square. So the number squared, and you have twice it, so 2x squared plus 1 more than, so that's plus 1, is equals 73. Okay, so now we got to set it equal to 0, right? So let's move our 73 over. Okay, and you have 2x squared minus 72 equals 0. Okay, well, what do we do? The first thing we check for, do we have a common factor? We do. So let's factor out our 2. So we're left with x squared minus 36 equals 0. Okay, so now hopefully you're noticing here we have a difference of two squares. Okay, so you end up with 2 times x plus 6 and x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, well when you work this out, right, you're going to set each of the factors equal to 0. See if I can move this all. Oh, I just took it. Ah, darn it, took part at a time. So let's shrink it down and move it up that way. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. You take each of the factors and set them equal to 0, right? Well, 2 can never be 0, so that you don't worry about the 2. You just start with the x plus 6 equals 0. And the x minus 6 equals 0. Okay? So then we go to minus 6. So x can equal negative 6. And we do plus 6. So x can equal to 6. And those are your two answers. Okay? Alright, so that's the first part of all of the word problems. And we're going to keep going on now. Now it's kind of more real life type word problems, okay? Okay. So the next part is talking about the area of a sail. Okay, and when we're talking about sails and things like that, I always like to kind of draw the picture of it. Okay, so a sail, you don't have to draw the whole boat. Let's just draw a sail, right? A sail is like a triangle, right? And they're talking about the area of a triangle. So if you remember, hopefully, and it's written there in your notes on page 23, the area of a triangle is equal to 1/2 the base times the height, right? Okay, so now we just got to figure out what everything is. Okay, well it says here the area is 93.75 square meters. Okay, well we're not going to do the meters right just yet because we don't want to put any extra thing in there. Okay, so 93.75, and then equals 1/2, okay, the base times the height. So it says the height is 8.75 meters greater than the base, right? So let's start with the base. B equals the base, right? And the height is going to be the base plus 8.75. Okay, that's the height. Okay, so we have 1/2 of B times B plus 8.75. Okay? Alright. Okay, so I'm doing this a little different than your notes say, because your notes are going to base everything off of the height, but I'm basing it all off the base, right? Okay, so it's okay. The same thing is going to happen. You could do it either way. So here's what we do. Let's first of all get rid of that 1/2. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply times 2 over 1, or times 2, right, on both sides. And then those will cancel out, and you'll be left with B times B plus 8.75. And on this side, you're going to end up with 187.5. Okay? So now our fractions out of the way, because that would have been kind of confusing having fractions and decimals. So we got rid of that. Now the next part is to distribute your negative. Okay, so we have 187.5, not your negative, sorry, distribute your b. We end up with b squared plus 8.75b. Okay? Now we have to get this equal to 0, right? So we subtract 187.5 from both sides. Okay, and you end up with 0 equals b squared plus 8.75b minus 187.5. Okay, and so if you look, we basically have the same thing, right? It's just a little different because instead of having the minus in the middle and the minus at the end, we now have a plus in the middle and a plus at the end, and a minus at the end. Okay, so let's move this a little bit so I get more room. Alright, so our factor is going to be the same thing, right? It's going to be 0 equals b's in the front and the back, okay, and then you have 18.75 and 10, okay, and in this case we want the 18.75 to be positive and the 10 to be negative, and there they have them opposite, right, because they did the h instead of the b. Okay, so don't stress that I'm a little different, because it's going to work out. Alright, so your b, okay, is going to equal, so b plus 18.75 equals 0, and b minus 10 equals 0. and so you subtract 18.75. So you get B equals, negative 18.75, and B, plus 10, plus 10, okay, B equals 10. Okay, so now, here's the part where it gets a little different, because that's our base and our height, right? Okay, so right now, if you look, we have a negative 18.75 or a 10. Okay, and we're talking about the base right now. So here's the deal. The base can't be negative, right? So you're going to cross out that 18.75, which is funny because doing it with the height, it's exactly the opposite, right? You cross off the negative 10. But because we have the base instead, what you have to do is you have to take the base, oops, trying to move this up. Okay, oh, that's going to get ugly. Let's do this again. Okay, take the base. Okay, if the base is 10, the height is base plus 8.75, right? So the height is now 10 plus 8.75, which is 18.75. And remember, it's meters squared. So even though I chose base and the notes were written choosing height, okay, we both got the same answer. Okay, the work works out to be the same, and that's the kind of the cool thing when you get to these upper levels of math, is that they both can work out to be the same thing, even though you take a little different path. Okay, so don't freak out that I chose base instead of the height, because it all works out to be the same thing. Okay, let's keep going on here. We got another example on the next page. Okay, the product of two consecutive integers is 156. Find the integers. Now remember that when we did these before, right? We said x was the first integer, and then they're just doing consecutive, not consecutive even or anything like that. So consecutive means the next one, so x plus 1 is the second, right? And it says the product this time. So we're going to do x times x plus 1 is equal to 156. Okay, now let's distribute. So we get x squared plus x is equal to 156. Let's bring it over so we can start to solve. So you get x squared plus x minus 156 is equal to 0. Alright, so now we can start to solve. Let me get this shrunk down and moved up. Okay, so x squared plus x minus 156. So let's think about the factors, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use your notes here so I don't have to list them all out. Okay, because you guys should by now already know how to do some factoring. Okay, we're going to have our x's in the front. We're going to multiply to get a negative, so we have a plus and a minus. And it's 13 and 12, and we want the 13 to be positive, so we get that positive in the middle, right? Okay, now we solve. X plus 13 equals 0, x minus 12 equals 0. So we solve minus 13, get x equals negative 13, plus 12, x equals 12. Okay, so if we use x equals negative 13, then we have x plus 1 will equal negative 12. Okay, and if you multiply those together, right, negative 13 times negative 12, you get positive 156. So that works. Okay, so that's a good one. So now we do x plus 1 over here, and you get 13. And what's 12 times 13? 156. So both of these can be solutions to this problem, right? Whether they're both negatives or both positives, because when you multiply two negatives together, you get a positive. All right, now you have a couple try these on the bottom of that page. Okay, go ahead and give those a shot and see how you do. Okay, so let's look at the first one. It says the width of a rectangular card is 2 centimeters less than the length. Okay, so it's based on the length, so we got length equals, L equals length, and then the width is the length minus 2. Okay, and it says its area is 15 centimeters squared. So area is of a rectangle is just length times width, right? So we're going to do length times the width equals 15. Okay, let's go ahead and distribute those L's. We get L squared minus 2L equals 15. Minus 15. You get L squared minus 2L minus 15 equals 0. Okay, so if I can move this up at all. Oh, no, it takes the whole thing. Darn it, did the same thing last time. I'm going to also change the color here. Let's move this over, and I'm going to change the color. So you get L squared minus 2L minus 15 equals 0. If we factor that, okay, you got L and L. We have a negative last term, so we're going to do plus and minus. We want the minus to be the bigger one, and the factors of 15 that subtract to be 2, that'd be 5 and 3. So length L plus 3, sorry, well, let me erase that. L plus 3 equals 0. L minus 5 equals 0. So minus 3, length equals negative 3. That can't be possible. We can't have a negative length. So plus 5, length equals 5. And we know that the width is the length minus 2 is 3. So we have 5 centimeters for one side and 3 centimeters, oops, that's a cm for the other side. There you go, and 3 times 5 is 15, so we're good. Alright, that worked out pretty well. Alright, so let's check out the last one. Okay, the product of two consecutive integers. Okay, so x is the first, x plus 1 is the second. Okay, product, so we're going to multiply them. X times x plus 1 is 462. Okay, so let's distribute. X squared plus x equals 462. Subtract 462. Holy cow, this is a big one. X squared plus x minus 462 equals 0. Okay, well, I paused for a second and did a little bit of math. Now, hopefully, you guys, this is a lot easier if you're really good with your math facts. Okay, so if you don't know your math facts very well, this is going to be kind of hard for you, right? So, we're going to go ahead and break this down. Whoops. Okay. And here's what I did when I was thinking about the numbers. Actually, first of all, let's fill in our x's. We know that they multiply to be a negative, so we're going to do plus and minus. Okay, and I know that they're going to subtract, and I know that they have to be 1 right next to each other, right? Because we're going to end up with 1 when we subtract. So they got to be two numbers that are really close. Okay, they got to be one number apart. So here's the deal. I know, just by in the top of my head, I know that 20 times 20 is 400. Okay, so then I went, well, 20 times 21 is 220. Okay, so 20 and 21 is not enough. So then I tried 21 and 22, and guess what? That was right. Okay, so that's what you need to start thinking about. Okay, you need to start thinking with your head a little bit and going, all right, how is this going to get me close? Don't just sit there and stab at random numbers and hope you're close. Try and find what's going to put you close to that number. Okay, so the two numbers I'm going to use are 22 and 21, and I want the positive one to be 22 because I want that to be bigger. Okay, so you end up with x plus 22 equals 0. x minus 21 equals 0. So we subtract 22, x equals negative 22. We add 21, x equals 21. Okay, and then our second number is x plus 1, right? So we add 1 to negative 22, you get negative 21. Add 1 over here, and you get positive 22. And if you multiply those together, you'll get 462. So those are your sets of numbers that are your answer. Alright, well, congratulations and scary all at the same time. That's the last video for this unit. So you have gone through everything. You have the review on there, you have a 10 marks assignment that you have Khan Academy, you have a team with you that you should be working with, practicing, you have a review that you need to do, and all of that before you take your unit tests. So make sure that you are practicing like crazy before you get to this unit test. Okay? Hopefully by now everything's kind of making sense to you a little bit, except for the word problems, of course. That takes a little bit of time to get used to. But give them all a shot, and I think you'll do fine. You just got to make sure you practice and make sure you're ready before you come and get your test. All right?